Mother Nature apparently got very sick of me discussing the Houston Astros on this podcast because I was fully prepared to talk about Framber Valdez as being my second-ranked pitcher for tonight and having the Astros as the top stack. And Mother Nature, apparently a big solo shot listener, had enough of the Astros talk for this week because it's gonna rain a lot in Detroit for today. So I am going to lop off the Astros from both the pitching and the stacks under the assumption that game probably does not go. So if you are sick of the Astros or just don't like hearing about them because of the stuff that happened a couple years ago, you're free to go. This podcast will be Astro free outside of the occasional mentions of where I would put guys if they were to play. So you are welcome via Mother Nature. Welcome on into the solo shot. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com, here to break down Friday's 13-game main slate with lock set for 7:07 p.m. Eastern for tonight. So again, 2 extra minutes to make our lineups look a whole heck of a lot worse. The big weather note for today is that rain in Detroit. For the Tigers and the Astros, as mentioned, Framber Valdez would be my number 2 pitcher, if not for this, and the Astros would be my number 1 stack, if not for the rain. But I feel like that game's probably not going to go based on the forecast via dark sky weather. Maybe that changes by the time we get to our 4 p.m. stream. We can go full analysis on them, but didn't want to waste your time for today, so I will not be talking about the Astros or the Tigers in the pitching and stacks section. There is a chance of rain in Cincinnati for the Reds and the Braves. Should be good to go. Same thing for Chicago between the White Sox and the Mariners. So keep an eye on Cincinnati and Chicago for some rain, but as of right now, I'm guessing things are good to go. So we can analyze all these games in depth outside of the Astros and the Tigers. Hopefully by the time we get to our 4 p.m. stream today, we'll have good news on the weather for Tigers Astros. That is at 4 p.m. Eastern on the FanDuel YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Twitter pages. So make sure you swing on by then. Get your questions in, ask whatever is on your mind with regards to MLB DFS. And it doesn't have to be just this slate. It can be specific to process, anything else. More than happy to discuss all that. 4 p.m. Eastern time today on the FanDuel YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Twitter pages. Make sure you're subscribed there. And also make sure to subscribe to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. Fantasy Friday is on tap. We got the solo shot, of course. Austin Swaim's UFC Vegas 30 preview is already posted, breaking down this Saturday's card. It's a 13-fight card, so swing by and check that out. And then a NASCAR doubleheader at Pocono. Breakdown of that coming up 10:30 on the FanDuel YouTube page and up on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed after that. So Fantasy Friday in full swing for today here on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. If you like what you hear, make sure you leave us a rating and review. Hey, soccer fans, this season, FanDuel and Captain Morgan are teaming up to give you a one-of-a-kind soccer contest. Introducing Captain Morgan's Soccer Pick'em, a weekly fantasy contest that's entirely free to play. The contest is simple. All you have to do is make quick predictions for Saturday games this soccer season. You'll earn points for each correct pick and compete for a chance to win up to $3,000 in prizes every single week. Head over to FanDuel and enter the Captain Morgan Soccer Pick'em today. Must be 21 plus to participate. For more details, visit FanDuel.com or download the FanDuel Fantasy app. Eligibility restrictions apply, and don't forget to make your game day more delicious and sub in the captain. Pitching preview for this Friday main slate. Carlos Rodon is the highest salary pitcher on the slate over on FanDuel. Well worth it. He's 11-2. Framber Valdez, if that game plays, is 10-7. Yusei Kikuchi facing the White Sox. He's $9,500. Sean Manaea facing a righty-heavy Giants lineup is $94. We have Pablo Lopez, Chris Paddock, and Mike Minor as the other guys at $8,000 or higher. Now, when I was going through my process yesterday and trying to decide who I would talk up for today, I didn't have to finish out filling out my sheet. I did not know who was starting each game yet when I put down Carlos Rodon as the number 1 pitcher for today, because it is impossible to poke holes in his outlook for tonight. So Rodon, to me, far and away, the number 1 pitcher on this slate. He has strikeouts, he has skills, and a quality matchup. It's just fantastic across the board. The most relevant sample on Rodon is his past 6 starts. He's been using more sliders in that stretch. And he had good upside before. He was pitching really well. He obviously had a no-hitter. But he's been even better in this time. He has a 2.34 skill interactive ERA across those 6 starts with a 39% strikeout rate. And you might say, hey, that 6-start sample includes 3 starts before June. Maybe we're getting sold a false bill of goods here. But Rodon's strikeout rate has been at least 30% in all 3 of his June starts. So if he was using sticky stuff, it has not hurt him in a massive way to not have it. And one of those starts was against the Astros. Another was against the Blue Jays. So when you factor that in, he's been stupid good. The matchup tonight, not nearly as tough. He's facing the Mariners, who have a 28% strikeout rate against lefties with an 88 WRC plus. They will hit for some power at times, so they could get a solo home run off of him, but the strikeouts should more than make up for that. I think that the gap between Rodon and the rest of the slate here is fairly massive. He also goes deep in games. He has gone 103 plus pitches in 3 straight starts. So I generally try to provide like a counterpoint as to why a pitcher may not work out. I can't find a great one for Rodon. That's not saying, oh, he's a lock, because that's not true. In baseball, there's no such thing as a lock. But I would say my level of confidence in him is one of the higher levels of confidence I've had in a starter so far this year. Carlos Rodon, tremendous, and I'm expecting big things from him for tonight. So to me, far and away, the number 1 pitcher on this slate. Now, Framber Valdez, I do like him, and if not for the rain, he'd be second. So again, I don't want to waste your time talking about a game that's likely to get rained out. But if Valdez's game does look like it'll play, he'll be my number 2 guy for tonight. But if we take away Valdez, number 2 for me is Chris Paddack at $8,500. And it's kind of similar to Joe Ross yesterday, where I haven't used Paddack this year. And so it feels a bit weird to be here, but I think there are reasons to do so. Paddack is $8,500. It's the convergence of a couple of things. The first one is obvious. It's the matchup. He's facing Arizona. Then they have an 80 WRC plus versus righties, which is the worst mark on the slate. They have a 130 ISO and a 25% strikeout rate. So if you're looking at the pool of pitchers who can realistically do well against them, it's a lot of guys. And Paddack, I think, is in that pool because of what he's been doing recently. He has been a guy who got off to a rough start earlier on, but he has made some changes, started to add in a curveball, and that gives Paddack a third legit pitch in addition to his four-seam fastball and his changeup. He throws that curveball in his most recent sample just 12% of the time, so that's not like a massive focus, but it's enough to keep people off balance, and it seems like it's working. In the 7 starts with that curveball usage increasing, Paddack has a 3.21 skill interactive ERA with a 29% strikeout rate and a 4% walk rate. He used that to get 11 strikeouts last time out, 9 the time before that. That 11th strikeout game came against Cincinnati. Very good team versus righties. The Diamondbacks, not so good. So if we're looking for downsides with Paddack, it is length. He doesn't tend to go longer than 90 to 95 pitches, and I would not expect that to change. So that's annoying, and it does put a lid on the enthusiasm, but hey, it's $8,500. It's a pretty good step down from Rodon. But I think that if we get Valdez, I feel okay putting Paddack number 3 for tonight at $8,500. I've seen enough recently from him to feel like he's made tangible changes, good matchup at home, good park for pitching. I think that makes a lot of sense. But Paddack, number 3 for tonight. Our 4th pitcher is a scary one because this guy is facing Kyle Schwarber tonight. That is not fun. Kyle Schwarber is a machine right now. So I understand if you don't want to go here, but I do like Pablo Lopez against the Nationals. And most of it's because Lopez is a very good pitcher. He is similar to Paddack, where he's got a good changeup already, but it's been sprinkling in more curveballs recently. Over the past 7 starts with more curveballs, Lopez has a 3.28 skill interactive ERA with a 26% strikeout rate and a 4% walk rate. So honestly, like if you look at those numbers, they're almost identical to what Paddack does, but he doesn't have as good of a matchup. So that's why Paddack is higher, despite the fact they're very similar. One advantage Lopez does have is that his batted ball suppression numbers are very nice. He has allowed a 32% hard hit rate in this time. His fly ball rate is 33%. And if you are going to try to find a way to neutralize Kyle Schwarber, you got to find a way to suppress hard contact. Another one is you got to be good against lefties, and Lopez's strikeout rate does go down against them, but He also allows just a 31% fly ball rate. That's kept his overall results against lefties pretty steady despite the reduced number of strikeouts. So, yeah, it stinks to use a guy facing someone who is currently playing like lights out. Absolutely lights out baseball, like Kyle Schwarber. But Lopez has good batted ball suppression skills. He's in a good park, and he can get strikeouts. That's enough for me to put him fourth in the list behind Rodon, Valdez if he plays, and then Paddock for tonight. With that said, let's move to our stacks. And again, disclaimer, the Astros would be number one for tonight, if not for the rain, facing Willie Peralta. So I would want to go there. But if we get the all clear, the Astros are the top stack. But like with Valdez, not going to waste your time. So let's talk about other options here outside of the Astros under the assumption that game does get rained out. Matt Harvey is starting for tonight, and I feel kind of bad for the way the schedule broke for him because Harvey just faced Toronto last week. He now faces them for a second consecutive start, this time up in Buffalo. So it's rough. It's been a rough year for Harvey. Keeps getting worse because he has faced the Blue Jays once again. But I think we have to stack them again here and see if they can duplicate the success they had last time. In that game, the Jays scored 4 runs across 4 1/3 innings. And I find that reassuring in terms of stacking for today. And the reasoning I find that reassuring is that Harvey is a good amount better against righties than lefties in terms of his peripherals. The results have been about even, but the peripheral number is much better versus righties and lefties. And the Jays are a righty-heavy team, so it could, in theory, be a concern to see Harvey facing a righty-heavy team, but with how well they did last week, I do think that bumps up my confidence in them here. Harvey's also been sliding back recently. He's been cutting back on his four-seam fastball usage over his past 4 starts, throwing more stinkers and more curveballs. It's not working. He has a 5.24 skill interactive ERA with a 15% strikeout rate and a 46% hard hit rate. Harvey has let up 4+ runs in 3 straight games. So you could say, hey, if it's not working, he'll go back to what he was doing before, but that wasn't working either because he had let up 5+ runs in 4 straight starts prior to this. So I don't know what route Harvey takes to get out of this. I'm not sure if he can get out of this, but I'm going to keep on stacking against him until he does for today, which means we are on the Jays once again for tonight. Due to Harvey's platoon splits, I will bump up Kevin Biggio for tonight. He's been really good overall since he came back. He has a 316 ISO overall with a 13.3% barrel rate. He has as many walks as strikeouts. So I'm obviously still good at the righties. I'm just going to bump up Biggio relative to his baseline for today as a result of Harvey's massive issues with lefties. He's the one guy here who benefits from that, but I still think the righties are in play, but I do want to bump up Biggio relative to the other guys in this lineup. If we're trying to get to Rodon, though, the Blue Jays probably not the best stack to pump up because they don't have a lot of value. So we do want to find some value. And I think that the Yankees can bring us some of that. Obviously not Judge and Stanton, but I think that we have some guys here we can turn to. And I like them tonight against Martin Perez. Perez has really struggled since the sticky stuff discussion started, and it could just be coincidence. You know, I don't want to assign blame. It could just be a coincidence that he's had this downtick recently, but in the 3 starts since the discussion began, he has a 6.47 skill interactive ERA with an 11% strikeout rate and a 13% walk rate. The hard hit rate and fly ball rate are both 37%. Now, if you take those batted ball numbers in a vacuum, they're fine. Like, they're about league average. But when you pair them with his plate discipline numbers, the low strikeout rate and the high walk rate, they become an issue. It's definitely a small sample, but Perez wasn't exactly shutting people down before this. He has a 4.32 ERA for the season. His skill interactive ERA is 4.63. His expected ERA at Baseball Savant is 5.03. So if you take those as your baseline and slide them back a bit, we'd absolutely want to stack against him. And I think there is reason to believe that slide back is happening here. So I am in on the Yankees for tonight. The Yankees do have some value. Gio Urshela is a lower salary guy. We also have Gary Sanchez at $3,100. Not a value play, but it's not overly restrictive because he does get a pretty big bump up against lefties. His strikeout rate against them, 23%. Urshela has an ISO above 200 versus lefties. He is $2,800. You also have Luke Voigt at $2,500. He has a couple of dingers in 3 games since he came back, and that makes him an easy pick at $2,500. So if you want value, I would check out Voigt, check out Urshela. Sanchez to an extent, not really a value play, but then also Judge and Stanton, you can get to them with Rodon. So I would say the Yankees, if you need some help getting to Rodon from a salary perspective, they are a team you can turn to for tonight. For our third stack, it's not the best hitting weather in San Diego. I talked about Paddock and how it was a plus park for pitching. That is true. It is just 70 degrees, which puts a lid on our enthusiasm around stacking the Padres for tonight. But I still think they deserve to be number 3 on this list and then bump down to 4 if the Astros do play. The Padres are facing Corbin Martin. He has been back and forth between AAA and the majors. He struggled both of those locations. He has an 8.63 ERA in the majors, 5.32 in AAA. And, you don't want to look at ERAs in such a small sample, but not good when the results are that bad. Across 15 and 2/3 big league innings, Martin has a 5.91 skill interactive ERA with almost as many walks as strikeouts. He's also letting up a ton of hard contact. He did get more strikeouts in AAA with a 26% strikeout rate there, but that's AAA, 26% this year, not all that high there, and his swinging strike rate was 11.2%. So I think that we have a large enough sample on Martin across the 2 spots to say he's not going to be some shutdown pitcher, which gives me faith in stacking against him here. The Padres, not a team that give us a lot of value in trying to get to Rodon, but they're also not like a team that'll force you to break the bank. And they do have one guy who can move the needle in terms of value, which is Will Myers. He checks in at $2,600. He has a 175 ISO against righties. It's not a huge mark, but, again, we're looking for value. He can swipe some bags. So I would be in on Myers if he winds up being in the lineup for today, which I assume he will. He's $2,600. Probably not going to try to get to Eric Hosmer at 29. Trent Grisham bumped down in the order, probably going to bat 7th for today. He is $3,100. Pham, Cronenworth, all those guys below $3,500. So I think you can stack. I think you can stack any of these teams with Rodon as long as you're willing to make some sacrifice, which I am. So maybe I'm not going to get to Vlad. Maybe I won't get to Tatis. I hope I can. But I think that those teams are all worth stacking for today. And hopefully you can get there with Rodon. Let's finish up here with things to watch. Cleveland is facing a bullpen game for the Twins tonight. They're facing Danny Colombe. He'll likely get 2-ish innings to start that game. And Colombe has good numbers in AAA, and he's a lefty, which gives Cleveland some massive issues. But the guys coming after him, not necessarily elite, the middle relievers from Minnesota. So I am okay stacking Cleveland here, even with plenty of ambiguity around whom they will face. I would not base your selections, though, around as if they're facing a lefty, because the Twins might just go lefty heavy to try to exploit the fact that that Cleveland does struggle versus lefties. But I would not be actively seeking out guys who feast against lefties, but and I would also not cross off guys like Bobby Bradley, who may be a lefty and may not get the platoon advantage for his first plate appearance or so. They still work out. So I would say Cleveland, a good place to go, and don't handle them as if they are facing a lefty for tonight. We could see the Braves in a good spot for tonight. They're facing Vladimir Gutierrez. He's done some good things so far in the big leagues. Specifically, he is suppressing hard contact, and that's a massive, massive positive to have. But the plate discipline numbers for Gutierrez are just fine, and he lets up a ton of fly balls. So basically, the margin for error for Gutierrez is pretty small. If he slips, it could blow up in a big way. And the Braves, pretty good. I think they grade out well for today, and especially if you need extra value from the guys in the middle part of that order, I am very on board with that for tonight. So the Braves, middle of the order, the Yankees, middle of the order, good places to go for value when trying to get to Rodon. And again, Rodon's not outrageous. He's 11-2, but still need some guys who can help you get there for sure. Finally, I was on Twitter last night, and Pierre asked if I could do some dinger calls at the end of the podcast going forward. Tom Vecchio did this when I was out. I thought Tom did great. So Tom set the bar too high, and I am mad at him now for doing that. But, Pierre wants it. Pierre's been a long-time solo shot listener. He's been a good interaction on Twitter, so why not? We'll do it going forward. We'll do some dinger calls at the end of the podcast. I'll do one boring pick and one fun one. The boring pick is like the chalk, oh, yeah, no kidding. Fernando Tatis will go deep tonight. Cool. Good call, Jim. One will be more kind of off the wall, a little bit more under the radar for this one. So the boring one today, I'm not going to go as boring as I could with Tatis or Vlad, but I'll go Marcus Semien. He's facing Matt Harvey, which should make the appeal in him be pretty obvious. Semien, a lot of fly balls. I think that he makes a lot of sense. For the less boring one, I'll go with a team we have not discussed yet and talk about Austin Meadows. He's facing Griffin Canning, who has been letting up a lot of high impact contact. So I think that Meadows and the Rays are at least interesting for stacks for today because of the contact profile that Canning allows. The Rays almost got no hit last night, so like they're not in the best of form, but still a good team versus righties. Canning, not as high of a strikeout guy as Pivetta, so I don't really want to be super high in them for stacking, but for one-offs like Meadows, maybe Brandon Lau in there, Wander Franco, I think that they do work for sure. So we'll keep those in the podcast going forward. Thank you to Pierre for asking for it, and thank you to Tom for setting up for failure by being too good at it. That is all that we have here for today on the Solo Shot, but as mentioned, coming back here at 10:30 on the FanDuel YouTube page to talk some NASCAR for the Pocono doubleheader, going through strategy for both races and my favorite drivers in each salary tier for the Saturday race. That is at 10:30 on YouTube and up on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed immediately after that. So make sure you are subscribed to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. Check out the UFC podcast with Austin Swain as well, and get set for a fun weekend of DFS. If you have questions for me before the 4 p.m. stream, I am on Twitter at Jim Sannes, JimSannes. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcast. Big thank you to everyone for tuning in for today. Good luck to you with your DFS lineups for tonight. If I don't talk to you during the 4 p.m. stream, have a fantastic weekend. We'll talk to you once again next week. This has been the Solo Shot right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network.